Hello everyone, I Kuldeep Sharma welcome you all to today's session of Daily News Analysis, where we are going to look at the most important news headlines from the Hindu newspaper as well as the Indian Express. So let's start with the headlines for today. So the first news I've started with Indian Express for today because there are very few headlines, but these are not there in the Hindu newspaper. Probably in tomorrow's newspaper of Hindu, we are going to see the same headlines. So let's look at the first headline, and it's a very important change in trend. So as per the latest economic data for the financial year 24. So what is financial year 24? It is basically the year period between 23 and 24. And what is a financial year? So usually the timeline for a financial year is starting from 1st April of 2023. It is going to end by 31st March of 2024. And you must have observed in your houses also that your parents must be filing their income tax return before this date, because this is the end of the financial year. So in the last financial year, the financial year of 2024, here we have found that China has regained its spot after 2 years. So it is not for the first time that China has become India's largest trade partner. Earlier also, before 2 years, China was the largest trade partner of India. So as I can say, China has become the largest trade partner. So some of the data which is important, that the total trade between India and China for the last year was a total of 118 billion. So you can have a round of figure also. 118 billion was the total trade. And iske andar, the two divisions are, one is imports, the other is the export component. And interestingly, it is $101 billion. It is $101 billion, the import portion, and the export portion is a meager as compared to the amount of import. It is just $18 billion. And this data point is also very important because China has become the first country with which we have an import bill of more than 100 billion, and it was just done in the March month only. So it's another important data point. And which has become the second. So US has now become the second largest trade partner. So US was the largest for two financial years, financial year 2022 and financial year 2023. And China was your largest trade partner in financial year 21, and now again for financial year 24, China has again become its largest trade partner. So one other fact which you may note down is which sector from China imports the most to India, which is the most important sector, Chinese import sector. So the answer would be electronics, phones, tablets, etc. Electronics and electrical devices. So remember this, the first share is, the most number of share is from the electronic sector. The second is the manufacturing sector. Sorry, not manufacturing, but the machinery. At the second number, it is the machinery which we import the most from China. So this is the data from the first news headlines. Moving on to the next news headline. So again, there has been a growing issue, a territorial dispute growing on between India and Nepal. So let's look at the India-Nepal relationship. Apart from it, we are also going to look at this news also. So India and Nepal has a very good relationship since the 1950s, and it is visible by signing of a treaty of peace and friendship. Treaty of Friends, India-Nepal Treaty of Peace and Friendship in the year 1950 itself we signed it. And what it says, it basically says that India and Nepal are going to maintain a peaceful relationship and they are friends, which means if there is any third adversary country, India and Nepal are going to be together against that adversary, and they are also not going to allow their land or resources to be utilized against the other country also. So basically we are trying to guarantee peace and friendship between these two countries. So this was this. Apart from it, in 1952 there was a commercial treaty also, wherein India provided transit rights to Nepali goods through Indian territory. So basically, since Nepal, so you should know this, that Nepal is a landlocked country. And what is a landlocked country? that it does not have a direct access to the sea. So Nepal as of now does not have any direct access to the sea. So it is dependent on India for transfer of any goods by sea. So that's why the transit rights to Nepali goods were provided in the year 1952 year itself, and which means zero custom duty or tariff is required to be paid. Zero custom duty or tariff is required to be paid for movement of any Nepali goods through the territory of India. Apart from it, you must be aware of the Gorkha regiment. So Gorkhas is one of the ethnicity, one of the group of people living in Nepal, and Gorkha regiment, a partial deployment is from the Nepalis. So Nepalis, so Gorkhas, which are Pahadis, people living in the hill areas of Nepal, they are also recruited into the Indian army. So they can actually come and serve in the Indian army also, although their citizenship is of Nepal. And I hope you also know this, that we have an open international border between them. We have an open international border between these two countries. Apart from it, you should also know which are the border states. So which are the border states of India and Nepal? So the border starts from the state of Uttarakhand, then you can see UP, then Bihar, then Sikkim, and there is a very tiny portion of land which also touches West Bengal also, and it is a district of Darjeeling. Where people are demanding creation of a Gorkha land, because many of the people living in this region are actually descendants of the Gorkhas. So that's why they are demanding a separate state of Gorkha land, which is a region in Darjeeling in West Bengal. So these are the border states. Now let's come to the issue directly. So the issue is basically that there have been certain territorial disputes, and which territorial disputes actually exist between India and Nepal. So three have been mentioned in your handout in this particular news item also. One is your Limpiyadhura, but the other two are very important. First is your Kalapani region. So Kalapani region is a disputed territory between India and Nepal. Right now it is in the control of ITBF, Indo-Tibetan Border Force, Indian Tibetan Border Police actually. So ITBP के control में है Kalapani region. And in this Kalapani region itself, there is a Lipu Lake Pass, which is again in control of India, and it's the pass through which India and China do their trade. So it's a pass of trade. It's a pass of trade between India and China. And Kalapani region is actually a tri-junction. It's a tri-junction between India, Nepal and your China. तीनों की कालापानी एरिया में इंडिया, नेपाल एंड चाइना तीनों की बॉर्डर टच होती है. लीपू लेक पास इज अ ट्रेड रूट, इज अ ट्रेड पास. माउंटेन के अंदर पासेस होते हैं. देयर आर ओनली सर्टेन रीजन थ्रू विच यू कैन इजीली क्रॉस द माउंटेन्स. सो बिटवीन इंडिया एंड चाइना लीपू लेक पास इज द सेकंड वन. So what has happened in this particular case? So नेपाल है, नेपाल ने अपना 100 रुपीज का नोट निकाला, एंड उसके अंदर जो नेपाल का मैप है, इन दैट दे हैव पुट अप कालापानी, लीपू लेक एंड लिम्पियाधुरा एज पार्ट ऑफ द नेपाल टेरिटरी, एंड इवन देयर एडवाइजर आर अगेंस्ट इट. सो दे आर सेइंग that although we have a territorial dispute, we should be considerate of all of the consideration when we are printing up our notes. So this is the territorial dispute between these two countries, and let's look what other issues are there. So if you may know that in the year 2014 में we had new government of Narendra Modi. In 2015, Nepal also had a change in constitution. So the new constitution of Nepal was actually accepted or was formed in 2015, and there is a particular group of people known as Madheshis. The other group of people is known as Pahadis. So this is one type of division between the group of peoples. So Madheshis are people who are living in the plain areas. In the Terai region is basically the region which is abounding the Indio-Nepal border. So Terai region के अंदर, and Pahadis are hill peoples, hill district people. Majority of peoples are Pahadis in the state of Nepal. So Madheshis, because they live in plain area in Terai region, and being very close to the border, they actually have cultural and family ties. with Indians in the border state. So marriage also happens between the people of these two communities living in Nepal and India. So what happened was, when this 2015 constitution of Nepal, and Madheshis were actually protesting against this constitution because they believed that this is unjust. This constitution is actually unjust for Madheshis people. They are not getting proper representation, and since Madheshis had tacit support. So look, what is the meaning of tacit? Search for it. TACIT. So your English should also improve by these kind of classes also. So they had tacit support of the government of India. So government of India का tacit support था. Because of this particular protest actually continued for a year. So around एक साल तक, around not exactly 1 year, but around एक साल तक ये continuous रहा, and इसकी वजह से इंडिया और नेपाल के relations में भी sourness build up होनी start हो गई. So this is the basic issue between India and Nepal. Move on करते हैं to the third news. So again, there is a talk about a integrated theater command. So we have already created 1 or 2 integrated commands. Now there is a plan that apart from the CDS office, we should also have vice CDS and a deputy CDS office. So let's understand the background of it. So let's first understand who is a CDS. So CDS stands for Chief of Defense Staff. Chief of Defense Staff, and he is the highest military officer in the armed forces, not just the army but all the 3 armed forces together. And right now we have 3 forces. It is possible, like US has a space force. Similarly, we can also have many types of armed forces also, but however right now CDS is the highest position. When was it formed? So it was formed in the year 2020 for the first time. So before this, we did not had this office, and I hope you know this, that who was the first holder of CDS? Who was the first holder of this office? It was Bipin Rawat. And unfortunately, he died in a plane crash in the year 2021. So he was not able to complete his tenure. So the next question should be, what is the tenure? So actually there is no fixed tenure. But there is a age limit. Age limit is, the age of retirement is 65 years. So usually the 3 armed forces chiefs, the naval chief, the air force chief, as well as the army chief, they retire by the age of 62. So once you have retired from 62, between 62 65, you can actually serve as a CDS also. And the government wants, even if you are just 60 or 61, they can also still nominate as you to be the next CDS. So is this particular CDS person, is he above the other 3 chiefs of the forces? Then the answer would be no, because there is a particular term known as primus inter pares. What does means? It means first among equals. It means first among equals. And what does this mean? Basically that he is equivalent to, the CDS is equivalent to the army chief, the naval chief, the navy chief, as well as the air force chief. So he is equivalent to, the position is equivalent to the other 3. However, he is the first among equals. Just like your prime minister is equivalent to any other minister of council of minister. He is equivalent to any other minister, but he is again primus inter pares. Now let's look what his function is. So he is actually a link. He is actually a link. He creates a link between the military leadership as well as between the civilian leadership, which is basically Ministry of Defense. So if anything is to be told to the civilian leadership that we want such kind of changes in the armed forces, then it is basically the CDS which is going to be the link between the military and civilian leaders. So why do we create this kind of office? Because there is a requirement that there should be a integration of the armed forces in certain aspect. There should be an integration of the 3 armed forces. So now I'm going to rub it because I have to write down more things. So what do you understand by integration now? So basically, as of now, the armed forces, the Indian Army, the naval, the Navy, and your Air Force actually work separately. So let's say the armed forces, the Indian Army is fighting on the India-Pakistan border in Jodhpur, and they need air help. So what would the procedure would be? That the Indian Army is going to request the armed force, or is going to request the Air Force, that you should come here and help us in defeating the enemy right now. However, once we have an integrated command, then there would be a single officer. And that officer can be from any of the arms of the armed forces. He can be an officer of the army, he can be an officer of the navy or of the air force. There would be a single officer, and all the resources would be on his disposal. For example, all the resources of the army, all the resources of the navy, and the navy personnel and the army personnel, as well as the air force personnel and the resources, would be under the command of a single person. So that's why we are trying to create an office of CDS, so that we can integrate this command. And for this, we have taken another step known as theater command. So what is theater command? So rather than dividing the regions into different, dividing the regions with different forces, for example, the Indian-Pakistan border is basically manned by the armed forces. The maritime boundary is basically protected by the naval forces, and Air Force is present at different centers. And whenever one or the other requires any help, the Air Force is going to come forward. However, what do you understand by theater command? So let me take the example of the only theater command which we have, which is the Andaman and Nicobar command. So what is this theater command? So let's say if there is requirement of any security, if there is a security threat, it is the Andaman and Nicobar command which is going to respond. And it's a command consisting of all the three: armed forces, navy, as well as air force. So there would be one single officer. Whenever there is any kind of threat, it is the theater command which is going to respond. So as of now, we are trying to create theater commands for different regions in India. So I hope you are able to understand what is a theater command. So rather than different forces trying to adapt to different situation, we are going to create a single command, and wherein personnel from all the three forces are going to work together whenever there is a security threat. So apart from this theater command, there is actually one more other command known as strategic forces command. So this was created, Andaman Nicobar was created in 2001, and Strategic Forces Command was created in 2003. So as of now, this is actually a physically present theater command, and SFC is only a functional command. What do you understand by functional? So it does not have any kind of headquarter, any kind of place. It is just responsible for our nuclear arsenal. It is just responsible for our nuclear arsenal. So let me revise it again so that you are able to understand it. So CDS, the main job of CDS is to integrate the command. What is an integrated command? So rather than having three different officers from three different services, we are going to have a single officer for a particular theater. Like this, like Andaman Nicobar, there would be a single officer, and all the army, naval, and the Air Force personnel as well as the resources would be under his command. So let's say if there is any kind of attack in Andaman and Nicobar command, it is this single officer, the head of this integrated command, who is going to respond to that particular issue. Apart from this Andaman and Nicobar theater command, the other such theater command is Strategic Forces Command, which is only functional in nature. It does not have any physical presence, and it is basically responsible for maintaining our nuclear arsenal. So from where did the idea of theater command come up? So if you remember the Kargil war, so the military dispensation at that time believed that there were many faults during the Kargil war, that we were not fully prepared to tackle such kind of situation. So because of this Kargil war 1999, we created a committee known as Shikhetkar Committee. इसको कारगिल रिव्यू कमिटी भी बोलते हैं, शिखेटकर कमिटी और द कारगिल रिव्यू कमिटी, एंड इट इज दिस पर्टिकुलर कमिटी which actually recommended the creations of theater command. Okay, so this is all the background of this particular issue. Now what we have decided is that we are going to create another offices known as the Vice CDS and as well as a deputy CDS. And why we have decided to do it? So that there is more integration, and apart from it, it is a lesson, it is a learning from the death of Bipin Rawat in 2021. So when Bipin Rawat died in CDS, there was no hierarchy. Let's say if the CDS is going to die, who is going to replace after him? And if Vice CDS also dies, who is going to replace after this? So there must be a continuity in case of any hazard happening with the present CDS. That's why now we have decided, now we are going to have a Vice CDS as well as Deputy CDS. Apart from it, they are also going to have different functional roles also. Move on karte hain. So again, let's just have an update. So we have been doing this we are doing these kind of news again and again. So I'm just going to give you an update. What is the war update? And if you want to have more information regarding this, please go through the videos of previous days. So in the last week, we have at least covered this Rafah issue at least 3-4 times. So that's why I'm not repeating it. So let's have a war update. So what is the death toll right now? So as of now the death toll is 35,000. 35,000 Palestinians have died because of the Israeli push into the into the Gaza Strip. And one more important information which we have received is that we now know which is the largest refugee camp. So Jubalia refugee camp in North Gaza, Jubalia refugee camp is the largest refugee camp. It is the largest refugee camp of Gaza. There is a small news also where US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has made a statement that Israel lacks credible plan to protect 1.4 civilians in 1.4 million civilians in Rafah. So right now, like we discussed earlier also, 14 lakh civilians are actually there, present there in the state, in the city of Rafah. And as of now, whatever Israel is doing, Israel does not have any kind of plan by which it is able to attack the militants and not kill any kind of civilians. That's why we can see that the death toll is rising every day, and it has reached now the limit of 35,000. So this is it. Also, one more thing, Rafah is actually a border. We have already discussed it before also. It's a border between Gaza and Egypt. Rafah is the last one, and it's a border between Egypt and your Gaza city. Moving on. So now let's look at the news from the Hindu newspaper. Again, an election update. We have been doing it regularly because it is coming up daily, because the Lok Sabha elections are going on right now. So as you may know, the 4th phase is going on. So today there would be voting for the 4th phase of the election, which is one of the phases of the 7 phases of the election. So there is a total of 7 phases, and these 7 phases are basically for the 18th. So the Lok Sabha which we are going to elect is going to be the 18th Lok Sabha of India. And as you may know, the total number of seats for which the voting is going to happen is 543. So there would be a total of 543 seats. Earlier there were 545 seats. Now 2 seats have been removed of Anglo-Indians. So presently we have just 543 seats for which we are going to have Lok Sabha elections. And the kind of election which we are going to have, it is a direct election, which means you vote directly. And the system which we use is first past the post system. First past the post system. What is this first past the post system? Basically that whoever has the maximum number of vote, whoever has maximum vote is the winner. जिसके भी सबसे ज्यादा वोट होंगे, he would be declared the winner. There is no requirement that he should have at least 50% plus vote. Even if the most number of maximum number of votes a candidate has received is 10%, and rest of the candidates have received 9% or less, then the person with having 10% of the vote is going to win that election. So this is a election update. So if you don't know these facts and figures, you can actually put up these also. Move on karte hain. So now it's time to look at the editorials. So some very interesting editorials have come up. Although the data which has been provided here is not relevant for you, but still I'll advise you to go through this article also. So let's look at what this article is talking about. So recently there has been a report, a working paper being presented by Prime Minister Economic Advisory Council. What is it? It is basically a council to advise, economic advice to the Prime Minister. So that's why the name Prime Minister Economic Advisory Council. So let's look who is the chairman or head of this. So it is Dr. Vivek Debroy. Vivek Debroi is the head of this. So there is recently a paper published by PMEAC, and the person who has published is S. Ravi, Suhasini Ravi. That person, the woman, has actually published a paper, and therein they've argued that actually the population of Hindus has decreased, and population of Muslims has arisen in the time period of 1950 and 2050. So right now the Hindu population is around 78-79%. I think it's 79%, and 14% population is of Muslim. The rest is the other minorities of India. So right now 79% is the Hindu population and 14% is the Muslim population. And this particular article is actually a critique, is actually the critique of this particular report. So let's look at what is the critique. So I'll provide you with what exactly the points he has given regarding this data in very short. So what is the criticism of this report as per Faizan Mustafa? So as per him, what are the criticism? So first is that as per this report, this is very biased. Reason being that it is considering the time period of 1950 to 2050. So it's a very long period. Proper, as per him, at least I am not supporting this argument, but as per him, they are putting up this argument that if they want to do a contemporary exercise, then the period should have been 2000 to 2015, or a very short period. Apart from it, second thing which he has said, the major criticism, which is a very good criticism, is that the total fertility rate. So what is total fertility rate? So there is another article where we are going to discuss it in detail. So total fertility rate is the number of babies a woman is going to have in his reproductive age. So TFR for Muslims and Hindus is reducing for both. As of now, it is 2.5 or 2.3 for Muslims, and for Hindus it is 1.3. So it is 1.3 for Hindus and 2.5, or not percent, but 2.5 for Muslims. However, he is pointing it out here that the TFR reduction rate या growth या जिस speed से Muslims के लिए हो रहा है, it is more than the Hindus in the short periods. And again he has put up a third point, and here he has put up that even if the Muslims have a higher TFR, so as per global studies, TFR is a function of, or TFR depends on actually the literacy level. So it actually shows illiteracy in that particular population if the TFR is high, and the second is basically poverty or poor economic backgrounds. So he is actually arguing here on that in the advanced Muslims who are literate and who have good economic status, they are not having more than two babies. So these are some of the goods points which this particular author has provided against this particular report which has come up, and I think you should also have a read of this particular article also. Let's move on. So modest rebound. So again, there is a news regarding that the IIP index of India's production, which actually tracks the progress of industries, has actually shrunk by a small amount. However, let's look at what is IIP. So IIP stands for Index of Industrial Production, and it is produced by CSO, Central Statistic Organization, which is a body under MOSPI, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. So IIP is actually published by CSO, Central Statistic Organization, under Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. And what is the new update? That IIP, although there has been an increase as compared to last year, so as compared to financial 2023 to 2024, there is actually an increase in IIP. However, there are certain worrying portents also. What it means, we are going to look at. So first, let's look at the background of IIP. What is IIP? So Index of Industrial Production actually tracks three particular components. So which are three? One is your manufacturing sector. It's look at the growth in the manufacturing sector. Second is your mining sector, and third is your electricity sector. and they have different weightages. 77% is the weightage to manufacturing sector, 14% is the weightage to the mining sector, and electricity sector has a weightage of 8%. So by measuring the movement or by measuring the improvement in production in these three sectors, we actually calculate the index of industrial production, and that's how we come across what is the growth rate in industries. What is the growth rate in industries? So apart from index of industrial production, we also have an index of core industries. And this index of core industry or core industries are actually part of the IAP. And in India, there are core industries. There are 8 core industries. There are 8 core industries. And what are those core industries? So we have coal, we have cement, we have fertilizers, we have refinery products, basically oil products, we have crude oil, we have natural gas, and steel. So these are the 8 core industries which form part of the index of core industries, which actually form part of index of industrial production. So the news is basically that although there has been an increase, a very slight increase as compared to previous year, and the base year also you should know. Base year is the year by which we are going to calculate our progress. So as compared to 2011-12, we are going to see our progress. Let's say if I am looking for the progress of the month of May in the present year, I am going to compare my progress by May 2011-12 financial year. Okay, so that's how I'm going to compare. So although there is a very small small increase in IAP, however, there is one specific problem which this handout is pointing out, that as per now, right now, the consumption which is also known as private consumption. So what is private consumption? Consumption done by you and I. So basically the consumers जो consume करते हैं, consumers, public जो consume करती है, actually there has been no increase in it, a very less growth, and they are claiming that there is very less growth, growth of 3.6% and 4% in rural and urban areas. And how is it problematic? So basically how the industries or how the industrialist is going to decide if he has to increase the production or decrease the production, it is by looking at the consumption demand. So if there is consumption in the market, then only industrialist is going to invest more in the industries. And if there is not going to be any consumption demand in the future, probably the industrialist is not going to do any kind of investment. Because of this, the IIP in the future is going to reduce, which means in future the employment is going to reduce. Because less factory means less opportunity for job, less opportunity for increase in wages also. Increase in wages also, which means increase in poverty or exploitation of the workers also. So that's how you understand the economic topic. So this is a brief about the IAP which has come up in this particular handout. Moving on. So a really good article has come up regarding our trade policies. So this article is written by Prabhash Ranjan, who was earlier one of the teacher in NLU Jodhpur, and I had the privilege of being a student of his, and he was a very good international trade law teacher. So let's look at what he's talking about. So he's talking about a particular deal, a particular trade, FTA, free trade agreement being done between India and EFTA, European FTA, which is a grouping of 4 countries. So first understand what is FTA. So FTA stands for free trade agreement. And what is it? It's a agreement. It's a trade agreement between 2 or more countries. So it can be bilateral or multilateral. It's an agreement between 2 or more countries to remove barrier of trades, to remove trade barriers. And what are trade barriers basically? So there would be the minimum amount of tariffs like your import duty and export duty, as well as there is going to be minimum amount of any kind of custom clarification. For example, whatever procedure would be there, they would also be eased down. There won't be any more checking of the goods which have arrived from your countries. So this is the basic of an FTA. सबसे बेसिक एफटी का मतलब यही होता है, इसके अंदर और कॉम्प्लिकेशंस ऐड हो सकते हैं. नाउ लेट्स लुक एट दैट पर्टिकुलर agreement which he is talking about. So he is talking about one FTA which has been entered between India and EFTA. So EFTA is actually a organization. It's an organization, European Free Trade Association. It's European Free Trade Association. And it consists of 4 countries. The 4 countries are actually your Iceland, your Norway, Liechtenstein, and the 4th is your Switzerland. So you should know the name of these 4 countries because this has been coming again and again, and there can be a very easy question, a very straightforward question can come up from the name of the countries which form part of EFTA. So now they're saying that it's a very good FTA which has been entered by India, and he has provided certain different reasons why it is a very good FTA, and it's saying that we should make it as our hallmark or as our trademark when we are going to negotiate our FTA with UK and EU. So another information which you should know is that as of now we are trying to negotiate our FTA. We do not have a FTA with UK or the EU, and we should try to have a similar kind of FTA with UK and EU. Now what he's talking about? He's talking about the investments. So what he's talking about is that there is a particular investment chapter. There is a particular investment chapter in this particular EFTA. And what is the chapter? So it is talking about 2 things. One thing it is talking about is that it has made sure that EFTA, the countries of EFTA countries have to invest $50 billion. 50 billion FDI is to be put up into India in next 10 years. 50 billion FDI is to be put up in next 10 years, and second, again another 50 billion in the next 10 years. So this is actually part of the EFTA, and such kind of provisions has been put up for the first time, wherein you are trying to provide with an obligation. We are trying to provide with an obligation that they have to invest this much. Second is they also need to create at least 10 million jobs. They have to do 10 million jobs in India. So these are basically part of the investment chapter, and the technical name for these kind of commitment is obligation of conduct. Obligation of conduct. So what this means is that we are not concerned whether you are able to make 50 billion investment in the next years, or whether you are able to create 10 million jobs in India in the next 10 years. What we want is that at least you were trying to fulfill the obligation, the conduct obligation which you have asked for us. So basically this is a kind of provision which has been added into the India EFTA trade deal, and this author is expecting that India try to incorporate all these kinds of provisions into the next FTA it comes up with any other country. Apart from it, it is also suggesting that it is time that we move to a FTA 3.0, which means that what should be the future incorporation apart from these two in the future FTA. So one recommendation which he has provided is that we should not separate trade and investment. Trade and investments should be a single treaty. What does this mean? So usually we have a FTA, Free Trade Agreement for Trade, and we have a BIT, Bilateral Investment Treaty, as a separate treaty. And what he is suggesting is that we should have a single trade and investment treaty. And how is it going to help? So usually developed countries are interested in investment, and India being a developing country is interested in trade. A developed country is interested in investment, and a developing country is interested in trade. So we would be able to get some leeway, or we are going to get certain subsidies in respect to trade, certain advances for trade when we are going to give some kind of leeway to them for investment. For example, let's allow them free movement of investment in exchange that they allow certain kinds of product into their country. For example, if I want to export in agriculture products, in exchange I can say yes, you can invest, your companies can invest 70% or 80% without the requirement of government approval. So these kind of investments and trades can be made between these two countries. Apart from it, what other thing he is suggesting is that we should have a effective legal protection. We should provide effective legal protection to any kind of investment by foreign countries. So one of the issues which is being raised by foreign countries is that our dispute resolution process, basically our courts are very slow. They are very slow. A dispute usually takes at least 10 to 12 years to complete this cycle. So कोई केस अगर लोअर कोर्ट से स्टार्ट हो रहा है, हाई कोर्ट से स्टार्ट हो रहा है, so final disposal में 10 से 12 years लगते हैं, and by that time the investment is actually becomes useless. So that's why they are asking, yeah, he's actually arguing that we should have a effective legal protection. For example, we should have provisions for international commercial arbitration, which is a very fast mode of resolving a dispute. So it is this article which you should also go through. Let's move to the another very good article which has come up in Hindu. So what is this article? So there was recently a case. So I expect all of you are going to read this particular news because it is important for your legal reasoning also. A very important article for your legal reasoning also. So let's look at this particular case. So there was a Supreme Court case known as Dolly Rani versus Manish Kumar Chanchal. So it's a 2024 case. And what did the Supreme Court held in this case? That the ceremony of Saptapadi. Saptapadi is basically seven fere. Saptapadi. The court in this case has held, and it is not that the first time it has been held, but Saptapadi is actually an essential ceremony. It's an essential ceremony for Hindu marriages. For Hindu marriages, it's an essential ceremony. And from where does this particular condition has come up? So as you may know, there is a particular act known as Hindu Marriage Act. Hindu Marriage Act of 1955. So this act particularly, it basically regulates marriages between two Hindus. And there is a particular section 7. And what does section 7 says? That to have a legitimate Hindu marriage, all customs and rituals of both the parties. I am writing it down so you are able to understand it properly, and if you want to copy it, you can copy it. So section 7 states, legitimate Hindu marriage should contain all customs and rituals of both the parties. And the second provision provides that if Saptapadi is part of it, the seventh fera will complete the ceremony. So let's revise again what the section 7 says. It says that to make a Hindu marriage legitimate, all custom and rituals of both the parties, not just of one party, but जो भी customs and rituals होते हैं, both the parties to complete a marriage, they have to be completed. And second is, if Saptapadi is one of the ritual or one of the custom of that particular marriage, as soon as both the person or the couple completes their seventh fera, their marriage is complete. They've also clarified that under section 8, there is a provision of registration. So you actually requires a registration certificate also. So what does registration means? In this particular case and earlier cases also, the court had clarified that registration is only a proof of marriage. It's only a proof of marriage, yes, that these two persons have been married, but it does not provide legitimacy. So there can be a proof of marriage, but that marriage can be considered void if it is an illegitimate marriage. So to do a legitimate marriage, it is very important that both the parties do all the customs and rituals, because Hindu marriage is actually a sanskar. Hindu marriage is actually a samskara. Samskara जिसको अपन संस्कार बोलते हैं, it's a samskara, or other word is sacrament. It's a sacrament and not a contract. It's not a contract between party, but it's a sacrament. It's a samskara, because of which you actually require customs and rituals to be completed. However, this particular article is a criticism. This particular article is actually a criticism of this judgment. Why? Because this particular author is arguing that I hope the code does not mean that Saptapadi is an essential requirement for all kind of Hindu marriages, and he is given a particular example of Suye Maryadhi marriages. So what is this? So this is a type of marriage known as self-respect marriage. Self-respect marriage. And it is actually a kind of marriage prevalent in Tamil Nadu. It's a kind of marriage prevalent in Tamil Nadu, and the Tamil Nadu Legislative Assembly has created an exception to the Hindu Marriage Act, wherein they have provided that a self-respect marriage is actually a legitimate form of marriage. And what does happen in this marriage? So actually there is no requirement of priest or custom or ritual. No custom, ritual or a priest is required for this marriage. You can actually take a vow. You can simply in front of family or your relatives or friends. You can actually take a vow that yes, you accept each other as your husband and wife. You can take a vow. You can exchange ring. You can simply exchange garlands also. And that would be enough. So the author is arguing here, let's hope that Saptapadi is not the only way by which a marriage is recognized, and he has provided the example of self-respect marriage as another example. And then he has actually given different case laws, previous judgment he has provided, wherein this particular marriage has been actually recognized by the Supreme Court also. Okay, so as apart from the Saptapadi ritual, you should also know, in one earlier judgment, there was another ceremony which was considered essential. We don't know what the Supreme Court is going to held in our next judgment. However, Datta home is basically the yajna, जो हवन होता है जिसके चारों तरफ अग्नि की तरफ आप करते हो. Datta home and Saptapadi rituals were considered essential for a legitimate marriage. So this is what is the legal part of this particular article. I expect you to read this particular article. Why? Because the case has been explained in detail. However, this is the brief of this particular case, the legal brief of this particular case. Move on करते हैं. So another interesting article, number of children's more have more to do with development than religion, and why this has come up. So again, the background is the Prime Minister Economic Advisory Council report. This is this particular report. This is the context wherein they have argued that Muslims have a higher TFR. Muslims have a higher TFR as compared to Hindus. And here they have provided with different data points to show that it is actually not religion. It does not consider whether someone is a Hindu or Muslim, but actually it's related to development. So we've already done the theoretical part of it. Let's understand what is TFR. So total fertility rate is basically the amount of the number of babies. The number of babies a women will have in reproductive age. In reproductive age. And currently the TFR in India is 2.0. And as per certain reports, it is 1.9 now. 1.9. And one important TFR rate you should know is the replacement rate. One TFR which is important for us is to know is the TFR is the replacement rate, which is 2.1. And what is it basically? So total fertility rate means basically, let me explain you 2.0. What does 2.0 TFR means? So 2.0 TFR means that a woman is going to have 2 children on an average, or women in a country are going to have 2 children on an average. What does replacement rate 2.1 means? It basically means that around 10 women are going to have 21 babies between them. So on an average, 10 women are going to have 21 babies, and it is known as replacement rate. And replacement rate is actually related to the population of a country. And replacement rate basically means that, let's say in one generation, if in one generation there were 100 people and the country is maintaining a replacement rate of 21, in the second generation or the next generation, there would again be 100 people. How can we understand this? So let's say there were husband and wife, 2 persons, and they have 2 children. Two children, one son and one daughter. So basically these two people are doing what? They are actually replacing those people. So that's why a replacement rate of 2.1. And why do have 1.1 extra, or why do 10 should have 21? Why not 20 only? Because 10 women are going to have 10 husbands. So 21 is basically because not every child is going to live to their adulthood. Some might die before attaining adulthood. So to incorporate those numbers also, that's why we maintain a replacement rate of 2.1. And the news is basically that the TFR, the total fertility rate, is 2.0, and right now some believe 1.9. What do you understand by 1.9? Which means that around 10 women are going to have only 19 children, which means that the population has started to decline. So population has started to decline, and this particular article is basically providing you the comparison of Muslim fertility rate as compared to percentage of person who got married, and different. They have basically compared the Muslim fertility rate with regard to different kind of development statistics, and they have come to a conclusion that it is actually with regard to the development which affects the TFR, and it is not the religion. So this is this particular article about. Let's move on. So it's only a one-liner, but a very important one-liner for you all. So there is one particular person known as Kami Rita Sherpa. Kami Rita Sherpa, and he has broken his own record of climbing the Mount Everest for the 29th time now. So he has successfully climbed Mount Everest for the 29th time. So I hope you know these certain facts, like when was the Mount Everest climbed for the first time. So it was the year 1953, and the two persons who climbed it first were Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay. Tenzing Norgay. And let me ask you, I'll tell you two things, and then you have to tell me the next two. So which are the highest peaks? So Mount Everest is the highest peak of the world, and it is in Nepal and partly in China also. So it's on the Nepal-China border. So tell me the highest peak of India. Highest peak of India. So if I considered POK as part of India, Pakistan occupied Kashmir as part of India, the highest mountain peak is going to be K2 Godwin Austen. K2 Godwin Austen. This would be the highest peak. And if I don't consider POK, the highest peak would be your Kanchenjunga. And my question to you is, which you have to answer it in the comment box, which is the which is the fourth highest peak if you consider K2 Godwin Austen part of India, then which is the next highest mountain peak, which is in the Himalayas. So it's in Himalayas, which you have to tell me in the comment box. And if you can also answer me, which is the highest mountain peak, which is the highest mountain peak of the South India, in South India. So you have to tell me which is the highest mountain peak in South India. You have to tell me which is the next highest mountain peak after Kanchenjunga. One more interesting fact, that there is a category of mountains in the world which is higher than 8,000 meters. 8,000 meters, and Kanchenjunga and K2 Austen both have a height of more than 8,000 meters. But not this one. This one is less than 8,000 meters. So let's just answer, if you know these two questions, highest mountain peak in South India and the highest mountain peak after Kanchenjunga in India. Let's move on to the last news. So it's from the science page of today's newspaper, and why I have incorporated it in your Hindu news analysis, because for the last two times in the AILET exam, some or the other phenomena related to psychology or some other science is being asked. So that's why I thought, let's look at what is negativity bias. A very easy explanation is there. Negativity bias is basically that you actually get attracted. Yeah, you get attracted or you pay attention to negative news. You pay attention to negative news over positive news. And when you will read this article, you will also find out that if you have a negative first impression, then it is very hard. If you have a negative first impression, then it becomes very hard to change it. Once you have a negative first impression, it is very hard to change it because of the negativity bias only. And what is the reason why we have a negative bias? So the answer actually lies in the theory of evolution. So as you may know, the early humans were living in the wild, and because of which they had to be very aware of their surroundings, aware of the threats around them. So they had to respond first and fast, because if they were not going to respond, then some or the other animal is going to eat them. So it is because of this evolution, because we had to be very aware of our surrounding, very aware of anything negative happening around us. Because of this, we have this negativity bias. It's a very good tool to understand why, to study the human behavior and how a particular person is actually taking any kind of decision. So this is basically negativity bias. I thought of doing it because such kind of questions actually come up in your AILET exam also. So okay class, so that's it from today's Hindu news analysis. I hope to see you in the next class with the new set of news items from that day newspaper. Thank you and have a very nice day from my side.